The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Lao Tzu. As I mentioned in the last chapter, I grew up with ADD and dyslexia at a time when very few people knew what the hell ADD or dyslexia was, including me. People either thought I was stupid or that I was just being lazy when it came to reading. Even in high school, I had to sound out words slowly and awkwardly, one letter at a time, when attempting to read. I had to break down single-syllable words into 3 pieces before I could get them right. The bottom line was that DDP couldn't read. This is something that had embarrassed me as far back as I could remember. Having to read in grammar school, I mean, come on. I'd do just about anything to get out of reading in front of the class. I'd pull the hair of the kid in front of me if he was a boy, or I'd start talking out loud to the girl next to me just so I'd get sent to the principal's office and avoid the humiliation of exposing my weakness. It was something I hid the first 30 years of my life. It hit a crisis point in my late 20s when I was running Norma Jean's dance club in Fort Myers, Florida. Old Smokey was my right-hand guy, and he used to have someone put up the signs for the nightly promotions. You know, if it was ladies' night or whatever. Anyway, when you're putting up a sign, you can have only so many words on it. Think Twitter with fewer characters. So I wrote a sign and passed it to Smokey to give to one of the kids to put up. He looked at the sign, then back at me and said, "What idiot wrote this?" Now back then, he didn't know me well enough to say that to my face. I said, "Me, I wrote it." He was like, "Oh, fuck, sorry, bro." "Don't worry about it," I said. I felt like the dumb kid in school again. I said, "Stay close." After that, Smokey became my word man. That's what I called him. When I told him to stay close, he knew I meant that I needed him to rewrite my stuff. He knew what I meant to write because he knew me and he knew our club. But to anyone else, my scribbles just wouldn't make any sense. They looked like a doctor's writing on a prescription pad. I felt like an idiot, but I didn't know what to do about it at the time. Fortunately, no one else really knew except Smokey, and what was he going to say? By the time I was 30, I was reading at about a 3rd grade level. I had started seeing stuff about self-help guru Tony Robbins on TV. I was so fascinated by his late-night infomercials. The guy was 3 years younger than I was, but man, he had his shit together. I started to think, someday I'm going to be on one of his shows. I'm going to be one of his success stories, you know? Now, obviously, I wasn't going to read any of his books, but he also had books on tape, and I sure as hell could start listening to them. So I invested in them immediately. Robbins had inspired me many times in my life, and looking back, I think that's what inspired me to finally drop the shame and say, fuck it, I can do this. I can learn to read. Is it going to be hard? Hell yeah, it's going to be fucking hard. Am I going to get frustrated? Yeah, I'm going to get frustrated, but so what? I started by practicing reading out loud. I remember reading to Kimberly when we were driving to the movies. She listened to me and gave me this look. "What are you doing?" she said. "Stop screwing around and read it." I said, "I'm trying." I tried again and again, breaking every little word down into more syllables than they had, working over each vowel and consonant until finally she was like, "Oh my God, you're dyslexic." I'd never even heard that word before. I had no idea what the word meant. I was just asking her, "What the fuck does that mean? I can't read." "It's a learning disorder," she said. "You don't take in information the way most people do." To say that this was a revelation doesn't even begin to describe the way I felt at that moment. Now remember, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. Like I said, most people just thought I was stupid or I was being lazy, even though I knew I wasn't. I was smarter than most people I knew. Not book-wise, but street smart, you know? But when Kimberly told me that, I finally had a reason for why I was like this, and it wasn't just me. Knowing that made it much easier for me to try to work on the problem, because it helped me move past the shame and move forward. The question then became, how do I work on this? I had struggled with this problem for 30 years, so the idea of learning to read seemed to me like trying to climb Mount Everest. How long would it take? Would I fail like so many other times I may have tried? It was pretty fucking intimidating. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but by that point in my life, I had figured out that anytime you make a decision, you need to commit yourself to it fully. Over the course of my life, I've developed this goal-setting and goal-achieving technique that I now like to call Smackdown. Did you expect anything else from a WWE Hall of Famer? And what I've learned over time is that SmackDown really can work for almost any type of challenge. I hadn't really formulated or refined the idea at that point, I'll admit. Instead, it was something I did intuitively. Partly from what I learned from Tony Robbins and partly out of sheer instinct. But let me break it down for you. SmackDown stands for specific, measurable, achievable, compatible. Keep it going, do it, own it, write it down now. So, learning to read was too vague a goal for me. Instead, I set a specific goal to read one book from cover to cover. Now, I'm sure most people wouldn't think that's such a big deal, but for me, the idea of reading an entire book was overwhelming. To make the task less daunting, I had to set more achievable bite-sized goals. I've since come to believe that doing this works for any big goal or dream that seems intimidating at first. Luckily, a book is easy to break down. I was going to try to find a book with about 365 pages if I could, so I could read one page a day. I figured even if I could do that, I figured even I could do that. Now, if I would have started out reading one page a night before I went to bed, the experiment probably would have lasted for a week or so. Sort of like people who start a workout telling themselves, this is the new year, I'm going to get this. I'm going to do it for 5 days a week. That's usually okay for a week or two, and then life gets in the way. You lose your mat, you forget to do the workout that day. Before you know it, you haven't gotten off your ass in 2 months. This was different from other attempts, though, because I'd never set this specific goal before. I knew I had to change my habits if I was going to fit this new routine into my everyday life. I had to change my circumstances. So I started by writing post-it notes to myself. Read today. I had to put them everywhere. Where am I going to read? At night in my bedroom? Okay, so I put nights on my nightstand, my headboard, my lampshade. I stuck them on the bathroom door, in the shower, on the refrigerator. Everywhere I looked, I saw read today because I knew that if I wasn't constantly reminded of it, I might not do it. Hell, forget might. I absolutely wouldn't have done it. For some reason, seeing the actual words is more powerful than thinking them. It's a visual reminder of the actions we need to take in order to achieve our end goal, like I tell people all the time. Don't just think it, ink it. Notice I didn't have to read that. Write it down. Yes, you're going to hear that at least a few more times. It's important because actually writing down your goals has a different effect on your mind. For me, it definitely makes the goal more real, more urgent. Beyond that, writing down your reminders is powerful. You may think it won't help, but try it for yourself. Stick a note on your refrigerator that reminds you what your goal is. Even something as simple as eat clean makes you pause and reminds you to behave differently. It won't work every time you see it, but trust me, it works. It does. I finally finished reading that book cover to cover a year later. That was more than 30 years ago, and I still have it in my library. It was Lee Iacocca's autobiography. Why did I pick that book? I figured if this guy could bring back Chrysler in the mid-'80s, he could do anything. He could bring back the whole country. He was doing TV and radio interviews all the time back then, and I just loved everything I'd heard him say. People wanted him to run for president, but what I liked most about him was that when those same political hacks started trying to tell him what to say, Iacocca just told them, fuck that, I'm not doing that. So for the first legit book I ever actually read, choosing Iacocca was important because it was something that I knew I'd enjoy even if I struggled with it. And I sure as hell struggled with every one of those pages. Even though I loved reading his stories, I would never have gotten through the book if I hadn't come up with a method to break the big task down into manageable pieces. Each small goal accomplished was another step toward a bigger goal, and ultimately it changed my life. I'm not a speed reader by any means, but today I've read through and respond to the hundreds of emails I receive every day. I would never be able to do that if I hadn't read that first book. I'm as impatient as anyone I know. But I've definitely come to learn that no matter how badly you want to achieve something, you have to accept that it's not going to happen overnight. If you're not realistic about that, you're setting yourself up to fail. There are times when you have to just put your head down and do the work. One day, one page, one workout, whatever it is at a time. As you begin thinking of what goals you're going to set for yourself and write down, there are some guidelines that you should follow to ensure that you've got a solid plan in place to achieve them. It goes back to SmackDown. Specific. What is your goal? Instead of just wanting to lose some weight, be as specific as you can. Do you want to lose 50 pounds in 1 year? 100 pounds in 1 year? If your goal is too vague, it will be difficult to quantify your success. Measurable. Make sure there's a way to track your progress. How much? How many? How will I know I've reached it? My goal was to read 365 pages, and I can measure how far along I was at each step. If your goal is related to losing weight or inches, these are things you can measure. Even taking photos is a good way to measure your progress, and we'll talk more about that later. Achievable. Make sure your goal is realistic. If I had said I wanted to read that whole book in a month, I probably would not have achieved my goal because it would have been too ambitious. Don't set yourself up to be disappointed, because the motivation to keep going has a lot to do with expectations and incremental wins. Losing 20 pounds in a week is possible, but not probable. So be optimistic, but not unrealistic. One word of caution here when it comes to weight loss: it's not linear. There will be times when you do everything right and your weight still doesn't change. In this case, you can't measure your success too often because day-to-day or week-to-week changes don't always reflect the larger goal you're trying to accomplish. So in this case, I'd keep the weigh-ins to no more than a couple of times per month, if that. Compatible. I always say make it your own. Ensure the path you choose fits your life as much as it possibly can. If I had chosen a book on calculus to read in that year, I would have been miserable. It would not have been compatible with who I am or was. Your goal should push you outside of your comfort zone a bit, but don't set yourself up to fail by choosing a path that is too disruptive to your life or your personality. Keep it going. Once you've developed that compatibility to your lifestyle and to achieving your goal, it becomes a ritual. Now it's what you do every day, every week, and every month. Because you've made a commitment to it, it goes from task to habit. After that, all that's left is to do it. Do it. Own it. Write it down now. You've got to write it down, and you have to do it now. The sooner you do it, the sooner you'll be on your way to owning it. There is no tomorrow, guys. None. It's only today. If you feel excuse me for a sec. If you feel a hesitation in your mind, maybe you don't feel like you're ready to commit to achieving your goals. If this is the case, then ask yourself again, what do you want? Setting your goals is only the first step, yet I see a lot of people get stuck here. If it happens to you, it will most likely be because you're not quite sold on your own ability to achieve the things that you want. Maybe you need to go back and read chapter 1. You may feel like a goal you've set for yourself is so far away from where you are now, and that any step you take toward it is really, really hard. Reading the first page of Iacocca's book was pretty hard for me. So whatever your first step is, don't expect it to be easy or comfortable. All right. We're going to go into another DDPY success story. This one is about Jared, another inspirational guy for me. A friend of mine named Jared Mollenkoff had struggled with his weight his entire life. I'd go as far as to say he was a food addict. He once admitted to me that he used to drink cups of maple syrup. I just wanted to give him a bro hug. So Jared found my program online. And before I ever even spoke with him, he joined our online community and began blogging. What I want you to see is how far he had to go when he first started. The key is that he took the first step. Check out his very first blog. I think it's the best day one blog I've ever read. Truly inspiring. Here's Jared's story. I'll put a link to Jared's story down below. Week 1. Desire. It finally happened. I'm not even sure why or how it happened. I'm just glad it did. I finally got tired of being fat and unhealthy. It's hard to say exactly what my breaking point was. It could have been when I passed the 500-pound mark, but that was a year ago. Maybe it was buying pants in the largest size carried by the local fat guy clothing store. My birthday this year is another possibility. Turning 40 is cause for reflection, isn't it? Then again, it doesn't bother me that my performance at work is degraded. I'm too tired and worn out to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours. Can you imagine that? Maybe it was all of those reasons and more. Maybe it doesn't matter. And what's important now is that I'm ready to turn my life around. I have been fat my entire life. Every day I have woken up heavier than I was the day before. It was a fact of life and I accepted it. I didn't want to be fat, but I didn't fight against it, because I knew doing so would require a change in lifestyle. Intellectually, I knew that it wasn't just about diet and exercise. It was about altering the way I lived. For the longest time, I had no interest in changing. I knew that when I sat down to eat a box of donuts, they would make me fatter, that my back would hurt even more, and that it would be even harder to stand up and walk around. Today is different. I do care about how I feel and how I choose to live. I wish I knew what finally clicked in my brain, because then I can tell others how to change their mindset as well. It might be dangerous for me to say what I'm saying, because the excitement I feel right now could very well be the same excitement that countless others felt when starting a new fitness regime, only to later lose that excitement and fail in their goals. It would be fair if I were to experience that rush and disappointment. This is my first attempt after all, but I hope it doesn't turn out that way. I have chosen DDP Yoga because it is no impact. My body isn't able to run, jump, climb, or lift. I have also chosen this program because of DDP himself. I trust DDP. I have never met him. I have only ever seen him on TV, but I believe he is sincere in his desire to help me change. I may be a fool for giving this much trust to a stranger, but I am doing it anyway. Exercise. I learned some new moves during my first day with DDP Yoga. I watched the Diamond Dozen video and did my best to follow along as DDP showed me step by step how to position my body and use it in a new way. Some of the moves were more challenging than others. Getting down on that ground was super hard, and there were some moves that I simply couldn't do. But I could see a time in the future when I would be able to do them. The most important thing I learned was the concept of dynamic resistance, the idea of flexing your muscles to work against their own internal resistance. I felt and understood this concept immediately and thought it was perfect. This one technique meant that every workout would be custom made for my body and my fitness level. I can already see that as I strengthen my body, this dynamic resistance will increase to meet me at the exact spot I need it each and every day. After having so much trouble moving my knees and butt down to the ground, I chose stand-up as my first official workout and gave it a try the next day. 5 minutes into the video, I turned it off. I was sucking air and ready to collapse. The situation called for a change in strategy. I went to the recommended workout called Energy, and when I got winded, I stopped to breathe but let the video continue to play. I missed a few moves and joined back in when I could, and didn't worry about trying to catch up. There were several times when I sat down on the edge of my seat and continued while only using my upper body. I finished the video knowing that while I had not done everything as instructed, I had still made a major accomplishment. Nutrition. As monumental as it might be for me to add an exercise routine to my life, changing the way I eat will be even bigger. I have always seen junk food as food. It's delicious and so much easier. I mean, why should I cook dinner when I can just eat this bag of cookies instead? My 20 years as a bachelor have made me very accustomed to taking my 3 meals a day from a drive-through window. It's important for me to now see junk food as junk. Thank goodness the DDP Yoga Nutrition Guide is only a few pages long. I would not be able to handle anything more complicated than that. The simplicity is the biggest attraction for me. Eat real food and less of it is how I think I have heard it said before. Creating a meal plan that includes more plants than animals is bordering on the bizarre. It's downright un-American, some might say. I'm going to do it anyway, and I have had 2 experiences recently that demonstrate why I think it will work. 2 weeks ago, I was at a birthday party and felt bad about eating the cake and ice cream. This was a first. I have never felt the slightest bit of guilt about eating a dessert until now. The second experience was last night. I went out for groceries even though it was late and I didn't want to put my shoes back on. But here's the thing. I didn't want to go another day without getting more broccoli and apples. And if that ain't weird, then nothing is. I remember that change in mindset. That was weird. Fitness goals. I want to start small. Face a flight of stairs without groaning and wishing there was another way up. Tie my shoes without having it turn into a 10-minute fight to the death. Bend over and reach items from the bottom cupboards. Increase strength so my arms don't give out while shampooing my hair. If that goes well, I will step it up. Shrink my belly so it doesn't rub on the car steering wheel. Be fit enough to help with yard work. Ultimately, I would like to measure my waist in inches instead of feet, to fit in an airplane seat. Odds are you don't have nearly as much weight to lose as Jared did. And if you do, who cares? Because here's a guy with literally hundreds of pounds to lose who could barely do 5 minutes of my workout program in his first couple of days. He could have given up right there, but he didn't. He put in the work. He put in the work that he could put in each day. He believed it all would turn into something. So he wrote it down and he kept it going. Here's Jared 15 months later. I hope you can see this. This is why it's important to take them starting pictures. Now, obviously, the link's going to be down below because I know this is black and white and my camera's not the best. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. All right. So let me tell you what Jared had lost. Last paragraph in Jared's. Jared lost over 300 pounds in 15 months. None of us could have ever imagined this was possible. The cool thing was that he accomplished this on his own. With some help from our Team DDP Yoga community, I didn't meet him until he had already lost 180 pounds. He started off in far worse condition than most people I've met when it comes to doing DDP Yoga. But today, Jared appears in some of the most difficult workouts on our DVDs. It's proof that small steps turn into big things. He owned it. To get what you've never had before, you must be willing to do what you have never done before. Whatever it is that you decide you want, it's something new. But you still have the same job, the same spouse, friends, family, schedule, and routine. What can you alter to begin to accommodate change? How will you make room for it? How will you integrate the change into your life? What you normally have done before, that will change, so be prepared to move beyond your comfort zone. This is where you have to change your circumstances, just like I did when it came to learning to read. You have to change what you do in an ordinary day, an ordinary week. Bit by bit, you will need to substantially adjust your lifestyle because you're going to change your life itself this year. So even if you're prepared to put in the physical, everyday work required to change, you have to accept emotionally and intellectually that who you are is going to change on a fundamental level. Are you ready for that? If the answer is yes, then again, what are you willing to do? For me, I had to figure out how I was going to make daily reading compatible to my lifestyle. I don't know how many people can even fathom it, but becoming a functional reader at the age of 31 is harder than learning a whole new language, written in an alien alphabet, because you have no context to work within, nothing to base it on, so that even the letters themselves, the building blocks, mean almost nothing to you. That's sort of how I felt at the beginning. I mean, I'd spent all my life hiding my disability. I pushed away anyone who got too close to discovering my weakness. I cheated and took shortcuts to get around it. I used the people around me to disguise it. I had them read things for me, pretending I was too busy or too distracted to do it myself. No one knew. Not even my high school teachers suspected a thing because I was so talkative. And when I wasn't talking, I listened to what the teachers were saying. But no matter how closely I paid attention, I could never learn as much as the kids who could follow what was on the blackboard and in the textbooks. If you're not willing to put much on the table, then what do you expect to change? Or you still don't care about yourself. If that's the case, why try anything at all? But if you're committed to change, if you've broken your overall goal down to smaller, manageable pieces, and you've begun to changing your lifestyle, you'll take on the next step. Want to lose 50 pounds? Okay, you've got 12 months. That's a little bit more than 4 pounds a month. That's a little bit more than 4 pounds a month. That's absolutely achievable. Is the exercise program and food plan you choose compatible with you? If you have bad knees, joints, or back pain, you don't want an exercise program that puts too much impact on your body. If you hate or have an allergy to seafood, don't choose a food plan based on fish. Now, fast forward a year. That's how long it took me to finish reading my first book from cover to cover. Assuming you've achieved your year-long goal, what do you do next? You set a new goal? For me, it was, I'm going to read the next book. I'm going to start picking up newspapers and reading them. I'm going to start reading all the time. The bottom line is this: no matter where you are now, another year will go by and you'll find yourself in the same spot unless you write down your goals and take the first steps towards achieving them. Don't be paralyzed by fear of failure or fear of too much work. Just start small and hack away at your goal. You'll wake up one morning and realize just how far you've come. I know you can do this. Do you? I know you can do it too. I know you can do it because I did it. This is about DDP's book. I'll go into more about me when I start going over my weight loss stuff. So far, I haven't been able to figure out how to do that and have it make any sense. So let's go ahead and read chapter. Tomorrow will be chapter 4, either tomorrow or the next day. I have a hectic schedule, so I might not be able to get to it for a couple of days, but we're going to read this entire book, okay, and hopefully we're going to be done by the end of June. All right, so today was chapter 3, tomorrow is chapter 4. Your history is not your destiny, moving beyond your setbacks. Smackdown goals. I know some of you are going to pause to read it. One of them I had put in before. Holy shit. I've achieved almost every one of these goals. Talk to you tomorrow.